Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Scholar. Tonight's journey takes us into the quiet, crystalline world of winter. Winter is not merely a season of cold. It is a time of deep rest, a long and quiet breath taken by the world. The sun, a distant gentle eye, hangs low in the sky, casting long blue shadows across the land. The frantic energy of summer and the hurried harvest of autumn have faded, leaving behind a profound stillness. In this quiet, the earth settles, pulling a blanket of frost, or perhaps snow, close around itself, preparing for a long and necessary sleep. If you enjoy these quiet explorations, consider subscribing so you can easily return here whenever you need to rest. For now, get comfortable. Let your eyes grow heavy. Let's begin. The winter solstice marks the beginning of the astronomical season, but it is not a day so much as a precise, fleeting moment. This event occurs when one of the Earth's poles reaches its maximum tilt away from the sun, and for that hemisphere, it is the day with the shortest period of daylight and the longest, deepest night of the year. The very word solstice comes from Latin, meaning sun standing still, because for a few days before and after, the sun's path across the sky appears to pause its southward journey before slowly, patiently, beginning to climb north once more. This celestial turning point is not a sign of the cold's arrival, but rather a quiet promise of its eventual departure. It is the Earth, in its long orbital dance, taking its slowest breath in the dark before turning its face back toward the light. During the deep chill of the Northern Hemisphere's winter, the Earth is actually at its closest point to the Sun. This moment, called the perihelion, usually occurs in early January, when the planet is about 3 million miles, or nearly 5 million kilometers, nearer to the Sun than it is during the summer. This gentle proximity, however, does not warm us. The seasons are not dictated by distance, but by the profound and steady tilt of the Earth's axis, a tilt of 23.5 degrees. In winter, this tilt means our hemisphere is leaning away from the sun, causing its light to arrive at a low, shallow angle. The rays glance off the atmosphere rather than striking it directly, spreading their warmth thin and leaving the world to the quiet reign of the cold. Every snowflake that falls is a perfect, six-sided piece of frozen geometry. This hexagonal shape is not a coincidence, but a fundamental law written into the very nature of water. As a tiny ice crystal begins to form high in a cloud, its water molecules arrange themselves into a tightly bonded lattice. This structure, the most stable and energy-efficient way for them to connect, is a hexagon. As the crystal falls, more water vapor freezes onto its 6 corners, causing it to grow outward into the intricate branching patterns we see. No matter how complex the final shape becomes, whether a simple plate or a feathery dendrite, it remains forever loyal to that initial 6-sided foundation, a tiny frozen echo of a universal rule. It is often said that no two snowflakes are ever truly identical. While they all share the same 6-sided molecular blueprint, their final forms are shaped by the unique and winding journey each one takes from the cloud to the ground. As a flake tumbles through the air, it passes through subtle, shifting zones of temperature and humidity. A change of just 1 or 2 degrees can alter the way new crystals branch and grow, sometimes forming long, thin needles, other times wide, flat plates. Because no two flakes follow the exact same path, each one encounters a slightly different story on its descent. They arrive on Earth as frozen records of their travels, billions of tiny, unique sculptures shaped by the quiet chaos of the winter sky. The largest snowflake ever reported, was a breathtaking marvel of nature observed in the 19th century. According to witnesses at Fort Keogh, Montana, in January of 1887, a snowflake measuring a staggering 15 inches wide, or about 38 centimeters, drifted down from the sky. While a single crystal of this size is physically impossible, it was almost certainly what scientists call an aggregate, where many individual snow crystals collided and fused together on their long, slow fall. One can imagine this massive, lace-like cluster, perhaps as large as a dinner plate, tumbling gently through the cold air. It reminds us that even the most delicate and silent of things can, when joined together, create something of astonishing scale, a fleeting wonder that vanished as soon as it arrived. Snow appears as a blanket of brilliant, pristine white, yet the ice it is made from is perfectly clear. This beautiful illusion is a trick of light and structure. A single snowflake is composed of countless tiny individual ice crystals, each one a facet, like a microscopic, imperfect mirror. When sunlight, which contains all the colors of the spectrum, strikes the snow, it does not pass through. Instead, it is scattered and reflected, bouncing chaotically from one crystal facet to another, again and again. Because all the colors are scattered equally, the light that bounces back to our eyes is combined, and we perceive it as white. It is the color of pure, full-spectrum light, reflected back at us by the intricate, frozen architecture of the storm. One of the most peaceful sensations of winter is the profound, muffling quiet that follows a heavy snowfall. This serene hush is not an illusion. It is a genuine acoustic phenomenon. Fresh, fluffy snow is composed mostly of air, trapped in the vast, empty spaces between its billions of complex ice crystals. When sound waves from a distant car or a voice travel into this porous, airy blanket, they do not bounce back. Instead, they become trapped within that intricate crystalline maze. The sound energy is absorbed, its vibrations dampened and turned into tiny amounts of heat, effectively silencing the world. The snow acts as a natural acoustic tile, swallowing the noise of the world and leaving behind a deep, comforting, and restorative peace. Many creatures survive the winter by entering a state of suspended animation, but there is a crucial difference between true hibernation and the lighter state of torpor. True hibernation, seen in animals like dormice or ground squirrels, is a long-term voluntary state. Their bodies cool dramatically, their metabolism slows to a crawl, and their heart rate can drop to just a few beats per minute. Torpor, on the other hand, is a shorter, often daily, state of reduced activity. Animals like bears, once thought to be true hibernators, are now understood to be masters of torpor. Their body temperature drops only slightly, and they can be roused. It is a deep sleep that conserves energy, a holding pattern against the cold, rather than a near total shutdown of life itself. In the United Kingdom, only 3 native mammals are considered true hibernators. These are the hedgehog, the dormouse, and all of the nation's 18 species of bat. For these small creatures, the cold is an insurmountable foe, and their food sources vanish completely. True hibernation is their only answer. The hedgehog curls into a tight, spiny ball, its body temperature dropping to match the air around it. The tiny dormouse, weighing less than a golf ball, slows its heart to an almost imperceptible beat, and the bats, huddled in caves or old buildings, enter a profound stillness, their metabolic fires banked so low they are barely alive. They are all waiting, in a state just shy of death, for the world to warm and for the insects and berries to return. The North American wood frog possesses a winter survival skill that borders on magic. As the forest floor begins to freeze, the frog does not flee. It finds a shallow burrow, settles into the leaf litter, and allows itself to be frozen solid. Its heart stops beating, its lungs cease to draw breath, and it becomes, by all appearances, a lifeless piece of ice. The miracle lies in its blood. In the days before the freeze, the frog's body floods its cells with glucose, a natural sugar that acts as a cryoprotectant or an antifreeze. This syrupy solution protects the vital organs, preventing the water inside them from forming sharp, destructive ice crystals. For weeks or months, it waits, a frozen statue, until the spring thaw slowly softens the earth and coaxes its silent heart to beat once more. Evergreen trees, such as pines and firs, face the winter with a quiet, resilient preparedness. While deciduous trees shed their leaves to conserve water, evergreens hold onto their needles, and they do so thanks to a thick, waxy coating. This substance, called cutin, is a waterproof seal that covers every needle, drastically reducing the amount of moisture that can escape through evaporation. This is vital because when the ground is frozen solid, the tree's roots cannot draw up any new water to replace what is lost. The waxy needles are a masterful adaptation, allowing the tree to patiently endure the dry, freezing air. They are a symbol of endurance, holding their color and form, waiting silently for the return of the thaw. The needles of an evergreen tree hold a secret defense against the deep cold. As winter approaches and the temperatures fall, these hardy trees actively change their own internal chemistry to survive. They begin to produce high concentrations of sugars and special proteins within their cells. This sugary, syrupy solution acts as a powerful natural antifreeze. It lowers the freezing point of the water inside the tree's living tissues, making it much harder for damaging ice crystals to form. Even if ice does form, it is forced into the spaces between the cells rather than inside them, protecting the delicate internal machinery. This clever adaptation allows the evergreen to remain dormant but alive, patiently weathering the deepest frosts while its deciduous neighbors stand bare and exposed. The coldest natural temperature ever measured on the Earth's surface was a staggering minus 128.6 degrees Fahrenheit, or minus 89.2 degrees Celsius. This profound, almost unimaginable cold was recorded in 1983 at the Vostok Station in Antarctica. This remote scientific outpost sits high on the Antarctic Plateau, a place of extreme altitude, dry air, and a long polar night that lasts for months. In this frozen desert, the sun's warmth disappears entirely, allowing the heat to radiate away from the planet's surface into space without any cloud cover to hold it back. It is a cold so deep that it is almost alien to us, a stillness where the very air seems to freeze, reminding us of the planet's most extreme and inhospitable frontiers. In the still, deep cold of the Arctic, beautiful and ephemeral structures known as frost flowers can bloom upon the sea ice. These are not plants, but delicate, feathery formations of ice that grow when the air is much, much colder than the water below. As moisture escapes from cracks in the new, thin ice, it hits the frigid air, which can be minus 4 degrees Fahrenheit or minus 20 degrees Celsius, and freezes instantly. The ice crystals grow rapidly, wicking up more moisture and salt from the surface, forming intricate, spiky clusters that can be several inches or many centimeters high. They are salty, fragile, and short-lived, a temporary, crystalline garden that appears in the dawn light, only to be shattered by the first strong wind. The Arctic fox, wears the season itself as a perfect disguise. This small, resourceful creature undergoes a dramatic transformation as winter approaches. In the summer, its coat is a mottled brown or grey, allowing it to blend seamlessly with the tundra's rocks and soil as it hunts for lemmings and birds. But as the daylight fades and the first snows arrive, it sheds this coat for a thick, dense, and perfectly white pelt. This new fur is one of the warmest in the animal kingdom, providing incredible insulation. More importantly, it renders the fox nearly invisible against the snow-covered landscape. It becomes a silent white shadow, able to stalk its prey unseen, a living piece of the quiet, frozen world. Some reindeer living in the high Arctic have eyes that physically change color with the seasons. This remarkable adaptation helps them navigate the world of near total darkness during the long polar winter. Behind the retina, reindeer have a reflective layer of tissue called the tapetum lucidum, which is what makes many animals' eyes shine in the dark. In the bright light of summer, this layer is a brilliant, reflective gold. But as winter and its long darkness descend, the pressure in the eyeball changes, compressing this tissue and shifting its color to a deep, rich blue. Scientists believe this blue hue makes the reindeer's eyes more sensitive to the low light, and may even allow them to see ultraviolet light, helping them find lichen to eat against the snow. Not all snow is the same. Its texture depends entirely on the temperature of the air it falls through. When temperatures are very cold, well below freezing, the atmosphere is also very dry. Snowflakes that form in this environment are small, light, and powdery. This is dry snow, the kind cherished by skiers, as it does not pack together. Conversely, wet snow forms when the air temperature is right at or just slightly above the freezing point, 32 degrees Fahrenheit or 0 degrees Celsius. As these larger flakes fall, their delicate edges begin to melt, making them sticky. They readily clump together, forming the heavy, dense snow that is perfect for building snowmen and shaping snowballs. The very word we use for this cold season, winter, has ancient and watery roots. It can be traced back through Old English to a common Germanic ancestor, winter. Linguists believe this word, in turn, is derived from an even older Proto-Indo-European root, wed, which meant water or wet. In the northern climates, where the language first formed, this time of year was not defined by the cold alone, but by its dominant feature, the arrival of precipitation in the form of rain, sleet, and snow. It was, quite simply, the wet season. This ancient linguistic fossil, buried in our modern speech, reminds us that our ancestors defined their world by the great, essential cycles of the earth. In early Anglo-Saxon cultures, the passage of time was not marked by summers, but by the endurance of the cold. The year was counted in winters. A person's age was not reckoned in years, but in the number of winters they had seen. To say someone was 10 winters old was to speak of their experience, their resilience, and their survival. This phrasing reveals a worldview deeply tied to the land, and its most challenging season, summer, was a time of work and abundance. But winter was the true test, the quiet, dark period of waiting and endurance. It was the passing of winters that truly measured the length of a life, a poetic and stark acknowledgement of the cycle of survival. Migrating birds, such as geese and cranes, fly in a distinctive V formation to survive their long winter journeys. This elegant piece of aerial engineering is a powerful act of cooperation and energy conservation. The bird at the front of the V does the most work, cutting through the air and creating a swirling vortex or updraft. With its wingtips, the birds flying behind position themselves perfectly in this updraft, getting a lift that reduces air resistance. This allows them to use significantly less energy, enabling them to fly for hundreds or even thousands of miles or kilometers farther than they could alone. The birds take turns at the lead, sharing the burden, a perfect, silent demonstration of communal strength against the pull of the long journey south. When water freezes into ice, it performs a quiet, expansive miracle. Unlike almost every other substance in the universe, which contracts and becomes denser as it gets colder, water does the opposite. As it cools below 39 degrees Fahrenheit, or about 4 degrees Celsius, its molecules begin to arrange themselves into a rigid, open, crystalline lattice. This structure takes up more space than the jumbled, flowing molecules of liquid water. As a result, ice is about 9% less dense than the water it came from. This single, strange property is why ice cubes float in a glass, and crucially, why lakes and rivers freeze from the top down. This floating, insulating layer of ice protects the liquid water below, allowing aquatic life to survive the long, cold winter. The reason ice is so slippery to the touch, and why ice skates glide so effortlessly, was a mystery for centuries. For a long time, it was believed that the pressure of a skate blade would melt the ice, creating a thin, lubricating film of water. But this pressure melting theory did not work for temperatures far below freezing, or for a simple shoe. The modern understanding is that the surface of ice is, in itself, a unique environment. Even in deep cold, the very top layer of ice, just a few molecules thick, exists in a quasi-liquid state. It is not fully solid, nor fully liquid, but a disordered, mobile layer. It is this inherently slick, self-lubricating skin, always present on the ice, that allows things to slide so easily across its surface. The beautiful, feathery patterns that bloom on a window pane on a cold morning are known as frost. This is not frozen rain or snow, but a delicate painting drawn by the air itself. Frost forms when water vapor, the invisible moisture in the air inside your home, comes into contact with a surface that is below the freezing point. 32 degrees Fahrenheit or 0 degrees Celsius, the cold glass coaxes the vapor to turn directly into solid ice, skipping the liquid water phase entirely. This process is called deposition. The intricate, branching patterns, which often look like ferns or feathers, are not random. They are ice crystals faithfully following the microscopic imperfections, scratches, and even particles of dust on the glass, using them as seeds from which to grow their frozen, silent garden. In the winter of 1739 to 1740, the Russian city of St. Petersburg hosted a truly ephemeral piece of architecture. A palace built entirely of ice, commissioned by Empress Anna Ivanovna. This structure was a marvel of the frozen world. It was constructed from massive blocks of clear ice, cut from the frozen Neva River and mortared together with water that froze instantly in the frigid air. The palace was not just a simple shell. It was fully furnished with ice chairs, ice tables, and even an ice bed, all carved with intricate detail. Cannons made of ice were fired, and trees with ice leaves stood in its courtyard. It was a breathtaking, fantastical display of power over the elements, a testament to the beauty of winter, and a structure that was built to vanish, melting away with the first signs of the spring thaw. The quiet of winter in many parts of the world is broken by the cheerful call of the chickadee, a bird that seems to defy the cold. These tiny creatures, weighing less than half an ounce, or about 14 grams, do not migrate. To survive the freezing nights, they employ a clever strategy called regulated hypothermia. As darkness falls, a chickadee can allow its body temperature to drop by as much as 18 to 22 degrees Fahrenheit, or 10 to 12 degrees Celsius, from its normal daytime temperature. This controlled lowering of its internal furnace drastically reduces the amount of energy it needs to burn to stay alive. It enters a state of deep, cold sleep, a tiny spark of life preserved in the freezing dark, waiting to reignite with the first touch of morning light. In the 1840s, a Boston merchant named Frederick Tudor became wealthy from one of winter's most abundant and most fleeting resources, frozen water. He became known as the Ice King by pioneering the global ice trade. Tudor imagined a world where tropical climates could enjoy the luxury of cold drinks and preserved food. He perfected methods for harvesting ice from New England's frozen ponds, cutting it into massive grid-like blocks with horse-drawn plows. He then insulated these blocks in sawdust for long sea voyages. His ships carried frozen New England winter to the Caribbean, India, and beyond, transforming a seasonal nuisance into a valuable global commodity and forever changing the way the world ate and drank, long before the invention of artificial refrigeration. The phenomenon, known as thundersnow, is a rare and startling winter event. It is a thunderstorm that occurs with snow falling instead of rain. It happens when a mass of cold air passes over a warmer surface, like a large, unfrozen lake, or when a strong weather system has an unusual amount of upward motion and instability, even in winter. As the air rises and moisture freezes, the collision of ice crystals within the clouds generates static electricity. Just as in a summer storm, the result is the disorienting, magical combination of heavy, swirling snow accompanied by the bright flash of lightning and the low, muffled rumble of thunder. The sound is often dampened by the snow itself, creating a strange, subdued, and awe-inspiring display. A polar bear's fur is a masterpiece of thermal engineering, but it is not white. Each individual hair is actually a hollow, transparent tube. The fur appears white to our eyes for the same reason that snow does. The countless complex surfaces of the hairs scatter all the colors of light, reflecting them back to us as white. This hollow structure has a dual purpose. It traps air inside, creating an incredibly effective layer of insulation against the Arctic cold. It also helps the bear blend into the snowy landscape. Beneath this translucent fur, the polar bear's skin is not white or pink, but jet black. This dark skin is adept at absorbing the sun's rays, soaking in any available warmth and holding it close to the body. The great grey owl is a master of the winter hunt, capable of finding its prey without ever seeing it. This large, silent hunter relies almost entirely on its extraordinary hearing to locate voles and lemmings moving beneath deep layers of snow. Its face is a flat, feathered disc, which acts as a powerful acoustic collector, funneling the faintest sounds to its ears, which are set asymmetrically on its head. This asymmetry allows the owl to pinpoint the exact location of a sound with three-dimensional precision. It will perch silently, listening to the hidden world beneath the snow. When it detects the slightest scratch or rustle, it plunges talons first, diving as deep as 2 feet or over half a meter into the powder, emerging with its meal secured. The massive, slow-moving rivers of ice we call glaciers are born from the simple, persistent accumulation of winter snow. They form in high mountains or polar regions where, Year after year, more snow falls in the winter than melts in the summer. As the snow deepens, the weight of the new layers begins to compress the old ones. The delicate, airy snowflakes are crushed together, their intricate points broken, forcing the air out. Over decades, this pressure transforms the snow into a dense, granular ice called firn. As the weight continues to mount, the firn fuses into solid, crystalline glacial ice. When this mass of ice becomes heavy enough, gravity coaxes it to move, and it begins its slow, carving journey downhill, a relentless frozen force born of gentle winters. The winter landscape of Antarctica is home to a unique geological wonder known as the Blood Falls. At the tongue of the Taylor Glacier, a slow, steady stream of deep red, briny water seeps from a crack in the ice, staining the white glacier in a cascade of rust. This eerie phenomenon was a mystery for decades, but scientists now know it is the signature of a hidden world. Trapped beneath the glacier for perhaps millions of years is a subglacial lake, cut off from light and air. This water is incredibly salty and rich in iron. It is also home to a community of microbes that, in the total darkness, survive by breathing iron instead of oxygen. The red color is this ancient iron, oxidizing and rusting instantly as it finally meets the air. For the emperor penguin, winter is not a time of retreat, but the very crucible of new life. In the depths of the Antarctic winter, the coldest season on Earth, these remarkable birds gather on the sea ice to breed as the long polar night descends and temperatures drop to -40 degrees Fahrenheit or -40 degrees Celsius. The female lays a single egg and passes it to the male. She then begins the long, perilous journey back to the open sea to feed. For 2 solid months, in the face of blinding blizzards and unimaginable cold, the male stands, balancing the egg on his feet, huddled with his companions for warmth. He does not eat. He simply endures, a silent, patient guardian of the life he protects from the harshest winter on the planet. Many deciduous trees, like oaks and maples, appear bare and lifeless in winter, but they are patiently holding the promise of spring in thousands of tiny, protected packages. These are the winter buds. Formed in late summer, each bud is a miniature, dormant shoot, containing the tightly packed, undeveloped leaves and flowers for the next season. The tree protects this vital cargo from the cold and from drying out by wrapping it in a series of tough, overlapping scales, much like shingles on a roof. These scales are often coated in a sticky resin or covered in fine hairs for extra insulation. These buds are a quiet act of faith, a complete, pre-packaged spring, waiting patiently through the darkest days for the signal of warmth and light to return. The common housefly, a symbol of summer, seems to vanish in winter, but its lineage survives through a strategy of deep, hidden sleep. As the days grow short and cold, the adult flies die off, but the last generation of the season lays its eggs in protected, insulated places, such as in compost, soil, or the hidden crevices of buildings. These eggs hatch into larvae or pupae, which then enter a state of suspended development called diapause. Much like hibernation, this is a pause in their life cycle. Their metabolism slows to a near standstill, and they simply wait, protected from the frost. When the warmth of spring finally seeps back into the earth, their internal clocks restart, and they emerge as a new generation, as if from nowhere. In the 18th and 19th centuries, the River Thames in London froze solid so frequently that the city celebrated with frost fairs. During severe winters, the river's ice would become thick enough to support immense weight, sometimes for weeks on end. The river, normally a busy highway of boats, transformed into a frozen carnival. Londoners set up tents, booths, and pubs on the ice. They held markets, roasted oxen, and staged puppet shows. There were even printing presses set up on the frozen river, selling souvenir cards to mark the occasion. These joyous, chaotic festivals were a bold celebration of life in the face of the deep cold, a way for the city to reclaim the frozen, silent waterway and fill it with warmth and noise. During a brutal winter storm in January 2014 in parts of Ohio and Pennsylvania, a phenomenon known as a snow roller was widely observed. These are rare, strange, and beautiful formations that happen when the conditions are perfect. It requires a crusty, icy layer of old snow, topped by a light, fresh layer of loose, powdery snow. Then, a strong wind, but not too strong, must blow across the surface. The wind can gently lift a small patch of the top layer and begin to tumble it. As this small clump rolls, it picks up more of the fresh snow, growing larger like a carpet being rolled up. The result is a field of natural hollow snow cylinders, often with a delicate pinwheel pattern on the ends, as if the wind itself decided to playfully sculpt the landscape. Reindeer, also known as caribou, possess hooves that are perfectly adapted to the changing seasons of the Arctic. In the summer, when the tundra is soft and boggy, the foot pads on their hooves become thick, soft, and spongy. This gives them better traction and grip on the yielding ground. As winter arrives and the world freezes hard, these pads shrink, becoming smaller and tougher. This retraction exposes the sharp, hard rim of the hoof itself, which acts like a natural ice cleat, allowing the reindeer to grip the frozen, slippery terrain. This sharp edge is also a perfect tool, used to dig through the hard-packed snow or crater to reach the vital, buried lichens that sustain them through the long, cold months. The phenomenon of diamond dust is a winter illusion that fills the air with glittering light. It only occurs in extremely cold, calm conditions when temperatures drop below 14 degrees Fahrenheit or minus 10 degrees Celsius. In this frigid, clear air, tiny ice crystals, formed from moisture near the ground, do not fall as snow. Instead, they remain suspended, floating gently in the air. These are not complex snowflakes, but simple, hexagonal ice prisms. When the low winter sun strikes this cloud of floating crystals, the light is refracted and reflected, creating a dazzling, shimmering effect, as if millions of tiny, weightless diamonds are dancing in the air. It is a quiet, frozen mist that catches the light and makes the cold itself seem to sparkle. During the Little Ice Age, a period of global cooling that peaked between the 16th and 19th centuries, winters in Europe and North America were far more severe. This was not a true ice age, but a significant long-term chill in the planet's climate. The Baltic Sea froze over, allowing people to travel by sledge from Sweden to Poland. Glaciers in the Alps advanced, swallowing entire villages. The harsh, prolonged winters led to widespread crop failures and famine, profoundly shaping the history, art, and even the fairy tales of the era. The iconic snow-covered village scenes painted by artists like Peter Bruegel the Elder were not fantasies, but direct journalistic observations of a world held tight in the grip of a deeper, more stubborn winter. The snowshoe hare survives the winter, not only with a coat that turns white, but with feet that are a marvel of natural engineering. Its most defining feature is its enormous, oversized hind feet, which are densely furred. These feet act exactly like a pair of snowshoes, distributing the hair's weight over a much larger surface area. This allows it to stay on top of the soft, deep powder, while its predators, such as lynx or wolves, sink in. This simple adaptation gives the hare a crucial advantage, allowing it to bound effortlessly across a landscape that would otherwise be an impassable, exhausting trap. It is a creature built not just to endure the snow, but to master it, turning the deep drifts into its own personal sanctuary. In an emergency, eating snow to get water is a tempting idea, but it can be a dangerous and inefficient choice. The body must expend a significant amount of precious energy to melt the snow and then warm that water to a usable temperature. This process can actively accelerate the onset of hypothermia, as you are trading vital internal heat for a very small amount of hydration. A single cup of packed snow yields less than half a cup of water, and the effort to melt it internally can steal more warmth than the water provides. A safer, though slower method is to melt the snow first in a container, ideally using an external heat source, or at least using the warmth of your clothing, before drinking the resulting cold water. Deep within the glaciers of the Pacific Northwest, tiny, mysterious creatures known as ice worms thrive. These small, black worms, just a few centimeters long, spend their entire lives embedded in the cold, blue ice. They are one of the few organisms on Earth that can complete their entire life cycle in a frozen environment, living in a temperature range that hovers right at the freezing point. 32 degrees Fahrenheit or 0 degrees Celsius, they are a profound mystery, somehow burrowing through the dense ice and feeding on algae that grow on the glacier's surface. They are also incredibly sensitive to heat. If an ice worm is exposed to a temperature even a few degrees above freezing, its body quickly begins to break down and the animal soon dies. It is a creature born of the cold, and for it, warmth is a fatal touch. The intense, blanketing quiet and the disorienting white of a heavy snowfall can be a source of profound dread for some. This is known as chionophobia, an extreme and persistent fear of snow. For a person with this phobia, the first flakes of winter are not a sign of beauty, but a signal of isolation, danger, or a loss of control. The fear may be rooted in the practical dangers of being snowed in, the sensory deprivation of a whiteout, or the slick, treacherous nature of ice. Whatever its cause, it transforms the gentle, muffling blanket of winter into a source of deep anxiety, a reminder that the serene stillness one person loves can be a source of profound unease for another, a testament to the varied landscapes of the human mind. In 1812, Napoleon's Grande Armée, one of the largest forces ever assembled, was undone not by a single battle, but by the implacable, silent force of the Russian winter. As the French army began its long, disastrous retreat from Moscow, the season turned with a profound and indifferent cruelty. The soldiers were unprepared, lacking winter clothing and adequate food. The temperature plummeted and the snows arrived, turning roads into impassable drifts and fields into frozen wastelands. This relentless cold, which the Russians called General Winter, was a more effective defender than any army. It sapped the soldiers' strength, their morale, and their very lives, reducing a force of hundreds of thousands to a few broken regiments, a stark lesson in the awesome, impersonal power of the elements. During the winter of 1939, the small nation of Finland was invaded by the vastly superior forces of the Soviet Union, beginning the Winter War. The world expected a swift defeat, But the Finns used the season as their greatest weapon. They were masters of the cold, moving like ghosts on skis, dressed in white camouflage, and striking in the deep, frozen forests. The Soviet troops, by contrast, were unprepared for the brutal temperatures, which dropped to minus 45 degrees Fahrenheit, or minus 43 degrees Celsius. Their vehicles froze, their weapons failed, and their soldiers, clad in dark uniforms, were easy targets against the snow. For several months, the Finns held back the tide, a small, resilient force protected by the deep, unforgiving cold they called home. In the depths of winter, long after the autumn harvest, some of the world's most treasured dessert wines are born from a gamble with the ice. This is ice wine, or ice wine, a technique that requires the grapes to be left on the vine until a hard frost arrives, typically at 17 degrees Fahrenheit, or about minus 8 degrees Celsius. In this deep cold, the water inside the grapes freezes solid, but the sugars and other dissolved solids do not. Harvesters must race to pick these frozen marbles, often in the middle of the night, and press them immediately. The press squeezes out a tiny, precious amount of intensely concentrated, sugary juice, leaving the frozen water crystals behind. It is a wine of patience, risk, and cold, with a sweetness and complexity that tastes of the very essence of winter. It is a popular myth that the Inuit and other northern peoples have hundreds of unique, untranslatable words for snow. While this is an exaggeration, the linguistic reality is just as fascinating. These languages are polysynthetic, meaning they build complex new words by adding a long string of suffixes to a root word. So while they may have a similar number of root words for snow as English, they can create a near infinite variety of descriptions. A single long word might mean the snow that is good for building an igloo, or the fine powdery snow drifting in the wind. It is not a vocabulary of vast quantity, but one of immense precision, a linguistic toolkit perfectly shaped to describe the subtle, shifting, and all-important character of the winter world. After a long day on a bright, snowy landscape, one can experience a painful condition known as snow blindness or photokeratitis. This is, quite literally, a sunburn of the eyes. Fresh snow is an almost perfect mirror, capable of reflecting over 80% of the sun's ultraviolet or UV rays. On a bright day, this means the eyes are being assaulted by UV radiation from above and from below, a double dose of exposure. This radiation damages the cornea, the clear outer layer of the eye, causing inflammation, pain, and a gritty feeling, as if sand were trapped in the eyelids. It is a powerful reminder that the beautiful, white, reflective blanket of winter carries its own hidden intensity, a brightness so profound that it can, for a time, steal our sight. The vast winter palace in St. Petersburg, Russia, was a symbol of imperial power, but it was also a monumental and often failing experiment in fighting the cold. This colossal building, with over 1,500 rooms, was a city unto itself, and keeping it warm during the brutal Russian winters was a constant battle. The palace was heated by a sprawling, inefficient system of over 100 individual fireplaces and massive porcelain stoves. Thousands of servants were employed in the wood service, whose sole job was to haul logs and keep the fires burning. Yet the palace remained notoriously drafty. Its immense, high-ceilinged halls and vast, single-pane windows meant that while courtiers might be sweating near a stove, just a few feet away, in the same room, water could be freezing in a glass. An avalanche is not a single, simple event, but the catastrophic failure of a layered, complex system. The winter snowpack is a seasonal history, built layer upon layer. Some layers may be light and powdery, others hard and icy from a partial thaw and refreeze. The danger begins when a weak, unstable layer forms, perhaps of loose, granular snow, and is then buried by a new, heavy snowfall. This creates a fragile, hidden structure. All it takes is a trigger, a skier, a loud noise, or just the mounting weight of more snow to cause this weak layer to collapse. When it does, the heavy, cohesive slab of snow above it detaches instantly, shattering like a plate of glass and releasing a terrifying, silent, and unstoppable river of snow down the mountain. In the small Swedish village of Jukkasjärvi, 200 kilometers, or about 124 miles, north of the Arctic Circle, winter provides the building material for an ephemeral work of art. This is the home of the original ice hotel, a structure that is reborn every winter and vanishes every spring. Each year, in the cold darkness of November, artists from around the world gather. They use massive, crystal-clear blocks of ice harvested from the nearby Torne River and a strong mortar of snow and ice called snæs to sculpt and build the hotel. Each room is a unique, frozen suite, with beds carved from ice and covered in reindeer pelts. Guests sleep in thermal bags, their breath misting in the air, in rooms that hover around 23 degrees Fahrenheit or -5 degrees Celsius, a fleeting palace of pure, cold imagination. In 1816, a year of profound climatic chaos unfolded, which came to be known as the year without a summer. The cause was the massive 1815 eruption of Mount Tambora in Indonesia, which threw an enormous veil of volcanic ash and sulfur into the stratosphere, dimming the sun. In North America and Europe, winter seemed to never end. Killing frosts and heavy snows were reported in June, July, and August in New England and Canada, destroying crops and leading to widespread food shortages. It was a dark, cold, and desperate time. It was during this bleak, cold, and wet non-summer, while trapped indoors in Switzerland, that a young Mary Shelley began writing her dark, Gothic tale of Frankenstein, a story born from a summer that felt like winter. Ice fishing is an act of profound patience, a tradition that connects modern anglers to an ancient, necessary form of winter survival. The practice involves finding a spot on a frozen lake or river, using a sharp auger to drill a hole through the ice, which can be feet or meters thick, and then waiting. It is a quiet, contemplative pursuit, often done from within a small, portable shelter to block the wind. Anglers drop lines into the dark, frigid water below, jigging them to attract fish whose metabolisms have slowed in the cold. It is a world of strange contrasts. The bright, white, solid landscape above, and the hidden, dark, liquid world below, with the angler waiting patiently at the small, circular door between them. The sound of a frozen lake cracking is one of winter's most dramatic and mysterious noises. These loud booms, creaks, and groans are the voice of the ice itself, speaking as it moves. The sounds are most common on clear, cold nights or bright, sunny days, and they are caused by thermal expansion and contraction. As the temperature of the air changes, the ice tries to expand or shrink, but a frozen lake is a massive, solid sheet held in place by the shore. This creates immense stress within the ice. When that stress becomes too much, the ice ruptures, forming long, deep cracks that can travel for miles or kilometers in an instant. The sound is the ice relieving this tension, a powerful, natural adjustment to the changing cold. The delicate, feathery ice that coats tree branches and fences on a very cold morning is known as hoarfrost. It is distinct from the simpler, grainy frost that forms on a window. Hoarfrost appears when the air is not only cold, but also very humid, and the surface temperature is well below freezing. Water vapor in the air is drawn to these cold surfaces and undergoes deposition, turning directly from a gas into a solid. But because of the high humidity, the ice crystals grow quickly and freely, branching out in intricate, interlocking, feathery patterns. They do not coat the surface so much as they grow away from it, building a fragile, three-dimensional lattice of ice, a white, crystalline fur that transforms the landscape and then vanishes with the first touch of the sun. The long, dark nights of the Arctic winter provide the perfect, vast canvas for one of Earth's most majestic light shows, the aurora borealis, or the northern lights. This celestial dance is not a winter phenomenon itself, as it happens year-round, but the extended darkness of the season is what makes it so visible and profound. The lights are born from a collision high in the sky. Charged particles from the sun, carried on the solar wind, are guided by the Earth's magnetic field toward the poles. There, they strike atoms of oxygen and nitrogen in our upper atmosphere, exciting them. As these atoms calm down, they release their excess energy as photons of light, painting the long winter night with silent, rippling curtains of green, pink, and violet. In Norse mythology, the deep, biting cold of winter was a force of cosmic significance. The ancient stories foretold a terrible, final winter that would precede the end of the world, an event known as Fimbulwinter. This would not be a normal season, but 3 successive winters with no summers in between. The snow would fall from all directions, the frosts would be merciless, and the winds would howl. In this unending cold, all crops would fail, all bonds of community would break, and the world would descend into chaos. This great winter was the world's final breath, a time of profound stillness and desperation, the long, cold quiet before the final, cataclysmic battle of Ragnarok, when the gods themselves would fall and the world would be remade. In the deep cold of late winter, the sap in maple trees, which has been dormant, begins to prepare for the coming spring. The magic of maple syrup production relies on the unique physics of the tree's internal plumbing and the specific winter pattern of freezing nights and thawing days. On a cold night, below freezing, the tree's trunk and branches cool, and the sap, which is mostly water, is drawn up from the roots, creating a negative pressure or suction. Then, as the sun warms the tree during the day, the temperature rises above freezing, melting the ice and creating a positive pressure. This pressure pushes the slightly sweetened sap back down, and it is this run that maple farmers tap into, collecting the clear, watery liquid that they will boil down into the thick, sweet syrup. The full moons of winter were given poetic, practical names by Native American and early colonial cultures to mark the passage of the seasons. The full moon that occurs in February is most commonly known as the snow moon. This name was an obvious descriptive truth, as February is often the month of the deepest, heaviest snowfalls, a time when the winter's grip feels most secure. It was also known as the hunger moon, because this deep snow and bitter cold made hunting incredibly difficult, and food stores from the autumn harvest would be running dangerously low. These names paint a portrait of a time defined by the stark, white landscape and the challenge of survival, with the moon's cold light illuminating a world buried in white. The deep, persistent darkness of the winter months can have a profound effect on the human body and mind. The reduced exposure to sunlight can disrupt our internal circadian rhythms, the ancient clocks that govern our sleep and waking cycles. Our bodies may produce more melatonin, the hormone that signals sleep, causing us to feel groggy and lethargic. For some, this seasonal change triggers a more serious condition known as seasonal affective disorder, or SAD, a form of depression that arrives with the short days of fall and winter and lifts with the returning light of spring. It is a powerful reminder that we are deeply connected to the planet's great cycles, and that our own energy and mood can ebb and flow with the tilting of the earth and the length of the night. The deep, frigid winter skies high above the poles can give birth to strange and beautiful clouds made of ice and acid. The stratosphere, the layer of our atmosphere above the one we live in, is almost always cloudless, as it is incredibly dry. But in the long, dark polar winter, temperatures can plummet below -108 degrees Fahrenheit or -78 degrees Celsius. In this profound cold, what little moisture exists can freeze, forming what are known as polar stratospheric clouds. They are not just water ice. Some are made of nitric or sulfuric acid. Because they are so high, they catch the sun's light long after it has set for the world below. Shimmering with ethereal mother-of-pearl colors, they are a breathtaking sight, a dangerous beauty in the long polar night. The snow bunting is one of the few birds that chooses to spend its winter in the high frozen landscapes of the Arctic. While most other songbirds flee south, this small, hardy creature, often called the snowflake bird, embraces the cold. It breeds in the high Arctic tundra during the brief summer. As winter approaches, it moves slightly south, but still remains in snowy, windswept fields and frozen shorelines, gathering in large, swirling flocks. They forage for seeds blown across the hard crust of the snow. Their plumage, a mottled brown in summer, becomes a brilliant white to match the world around them. They are like tiny, cheerful spirits of the snow itself, a flash of life and motion against the vast, white stillness, singing a quiet song in the frozen air. An ice storm is a winter event that does not bury the world in snow, but instead encases it in a heavy, destructive sheath of glass. These events, also known as glaze storms, occur when a strange, inverted layer of warm air slides over a shallow layer of freezing air at the surface. Rain falls from this warm layer, but as it strikes the ground, the trees, and the power lines, all of which are at or below 32 degrees Fahrenheit or 0 degrees Celsius, it freezes instantly on contact. This freezing rain builds up, layer upon glassy layer. The world is transformed into a breathtaking crystal sculpture, but the sheer weight of this beauty is immense, snapping ancient branches, silencing cities, and reminding us of winter's heavy, fragile power. The tradition of Groundhog Day, celebrated in the middle of winter, is a piece of folklore that seeks a personal forecast from a sleeping animal. Every February 2nd, people gather to watch a groundhog, or woodchuck, emerge from its burrow. According to the legend, if the day is sunny and the groundhog sees its shadow, it will be frightened and retreat, signaling 6 more weeks of winter. If the day is cloudy and it casts no shadow, it is taken as a sign that spring will arrive early. This custom was carried to America by German immigrants who had a similar tradition in their homeland that used a badger. It is a ritual of collective hope, a desire to find a sign, any sign, that the long, cold sleep of the world is nearing its end. The elusive snow leopard of Central Asia possesses a magnificent tail that serves as a vital tool for its winter survival. These cats live in the high, cold, and rugged mountains, and their tails are incredibly long, often nearly the length of their bodies, up to 3 feet, or about 1 meter. This tail, thick with fur and storing fat, is a multi-purpose instrument. It acts as a perfect counterbalance, helping the leopard maintain its acrobatic balance as it leaps across treacherous rocky cliffs in pursuit of prey. But when the animal rests in the freezing cold, it wraps this thick, heavy tail around its body, using it as a warm, insulating muffler to protect its face and lungs from the biting, frigid air. It is a perfect adaptation, both a tool for the hunt and a personal blanket against the high-altitude cold. In the far north of Russia, the Solovetsky Monastery stands on an archipelago in the White Sea, a place of profound extremes. Founded in the 15th century, it is a fortress of stone and spirit, built to endure a landscape of extremes. In the deep winter, it is plunged into the polar night, with only a few hours of dim, grey twilight to mark the passing of the day. Conversely, in the brief northern summer, it experiences the white nights, a time when the sun dips just below the horizon, and the sky never grows darker than a luminous, ethereal dusk. The monastery itself has been a place of pilgrimage, a formidable fortress, and a notorious Soviet prison camp. Its stone walls are silent witness to centuries of both profound darkness and unending light. Beneath the surface of the winter snow lies a hidden, secret world, teeming with life, known as the subnivean zone. This term, which comes from the Latin for under the snow, describes the small, insulated space that forms between the cold ground and the bottom of the snowpack. The Earth's own geothermal heat, trapped by the insulating blanket of snow, keeps this layer much warmer than the air above, often hovering right around the freezing point, 32 degrees Fahrenheit or 0 degrees Celsius. Small mammals like voles, shrews, and mice live and travel in this hidden network of tunnels, safe from the biting winds and the eyes of predators like owls, feeding on buried grasses and seeds. It is a secret, warmer corridor, a hidden kingdom where life bustles along, protected by the very blanket of cold that seems to have silenced the world. In the snowy mountains of Japan, a species of monkey known as the macaque has learned to survive the harsh winters by embracing a very human comfort, a hot bath. These monkeys live farther north than any other non-human primate, in a region of deep snow and bitter cold. In the Jigokudani Monkey Park, which poignantly means Hell's Valley, the macaques descend from the frozen forest to gather in natural hot springs, or onsen. They will sit submerged in the steaming, geothermally heated water for hours, their bodies warm, while their fur-covered heads are often dusted with falling snow. This is a learned behavior, a cultural trait passed down through generations, a clever social adaptation that allows them to endure. It is a striking, peaceful image of a community finding a shared oasis of warmth in the heart of a frozen world. In the deep winter of 1944, the fate of one of World War II's largest battles was dictated by a sudden, brutal change in the weather. The Battle of the Bulge began as a surprise German offensive, launched under the perfect cover of a thick, impenetrable winter fog and low cloud cover. This panzer weather grounded the superior Allied Air Force, allowing German tanks and troops to advance unseen For days, the Allied soldiers, particularly those besieged in the town of Bastogne, fought in bitter cold and deep snow, unable to be resupplied or supported from the air. The turning point came just before Christmas, when the heavy grey skies suddenly, and for them, miraculously, cleared. The sun returned, the fog lifted, and the Allied planes could fly again, beginning the end of the offensive. The battle's outcome was written not just by soldiers, but by the whim of the winter sky. Around the base of an evergreen tree in deep snow lies a hidden, often invisible trap, known as a tree well. The wide, low-hanging branches of a fir or pine tree act as a natural umbrella, preventing the snow from accumulating directly around its trunk. This creates a deep, hidden pocket of loose, unconsolidated snow, or sometimes even a large void, while the snowpack just a few feet away may be firm and many feet, or meters, deep. For a skier or snowshoer who falls into this well, often head first, escape can be nearly impossible. The loose, powdery snow offers no support and can quickly collapse, burying the person. It is a strange, quiet hazard of the winter forest, a place where the tree's own shelter creates a pocket of unseen danger, a silent, empty space hidden just beneath the beautiful, uniform surface of the snow. We are able to see the intricate, perfect geometry of individual snowflakes thanks to the obsessive, lifelong work of one Vermont farmer. His name was Wilson Bentley, and he became known as Snowflake Bentley. In 1885, after years of failed experiments, he finally attached a bellows camera to a microscope and became the first person in history to successfully photograph a single, perfect snow crystal. He would catch the flakes on a cold, black velvet board and then work quickly in a frigid, unheated shed before his tiny miracles of beauty could melt or evaporate. He spent the rest of his life capturing these fleeting portraits, taking over 5,000 images, and it was his work that scientifically confirmed the old saying that no two snowflakes are ever truly alike, giving the world a permanent window into their fragile, frozen art. On the frozen lakes of the north, entire temporary villages of small, colorful structures appear each winter. These are ice shanties, also known as ice huts, and they are the mobile homes of the ice fishing world. These simple shelters, often made of wood or canvas, are dragged or built directly onto the thick lake ice. They provide a vital refuge from the relentless, biting winds and sub-zero temperatures. Inside, an angler can sit in relative comfort, often with a small heater, over a hole drilled through the ice into the dark water below. Some are simple, functional boxes, while others become elaborate, cozy cabins with bunks, stoves, and even televisions. They form a unique, seasonal community, a scattering of small, warm lights on the vast, white, and solid emptiness of the winter lake. In the midst of the deepest winter, a warm, dry wind known as the Chinook can sweep down from the mountains and melt the snow in a matter of hours. This phenomenon, which occurs on the eastern side of the Rocky Mountains, is a type of foehn wind. It forms when moist air from the Pacific flows over the mountains, cooling and dropping its moisture as rain or snow. This now dry air then rushes down the eastern slopes, compressing and warming dramatically as it descends. This wind can raise the air temperature by 20 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit, or 11 to 22 degrees Celsius, in mere minutes. It is known as the snow eater, a wind that can make a foot of snow vanish in a single day. It is a full spring, a sudden warm breath that arrives in the heart of the cold, a dramatic reminder of the warmth that will one day return for good. A pivotal moment in the American Revolution was a desperate gamble, staged on a bitter winter night against a frozen, hostile river. In December 1776, the American cause was near collapse. On Christmas night, George Washington led his beleaguered, freezing army in a daring attempt to cross the Delaware River, which was choked with large, dangerous chunks of floating ice. A severe winter storm, a nor'easter, began to rage, bringing freezing rain, sleet, and snow. The crossing was perilous and delayed the operation for hours, but the army persevered. They marched through the blinding snow to Trenton, New Jersey, and launched a surprise attack on the Hessian forces quartered there. This victory, born from the chaos of a winter storm, was a profound turning point, restoring hope to a cause that was itself in the depths of a dark winter. On the vast, wind-scoured plains of the poles and high mountains, the snow is not a soft, uniform blanket, but is carved into hard, grooved, wave-like ridges. These formations are known as sastrugi, a word of Russian origin. They are sculptures created by the constant, powerful winds of these exposed regions. The wind erodes the snow, picking up loose particles and blasting them against the surface, much like sandblasting. This action, called wind ablation, carves the snowpack into long parallel grooves and sharp, irregular ridges, all perfectly aligned with the direction of the prevailing wind. They can range in size from a few inches or centimeters to several feet, or even meters high. They are a frozen, static record of the wind's invisible motion, a hard, wave-like texture etched onto the landscape. Honeybees do not hibernate, but instead survive the winter by forming a single, pulsing, living sphere of warmth in the heart of their hive. As the cold arrives, the entire colony, which can number in the thousands, gathers around its queen, forming a tight winter cluster. The bees on the inside of this cluster remain relatively warm and tend to the queen, while the bees on the outer layer huddle close, their bodies forming a dense, insulating shell. They generate heat by vibrating their powerful wing muscles, shivering constantly to keep the cluster's core at a stable, warm temperature. The bees slowly rotate, with those on the cold outer layer moving inward to warm up and a new group taking their place. It is a selfless collective engine of survival, a tiny vibrating sun of life, fueled by their stored honey, burning quietly in the dark, cold hive. The small, fierce predator, known as the stoat, transforms itself in winter into a creature of royal, pure white fur. In the summer, the stoat, which is a type of weasel, has a reddish-brown coat. As the daylight hours shorten, a hormonal trigger causes it to shed this fur and grow a new, perfectly white coat, allowing it to blend seamlessly into a snowy landscape. This beautiful white fur is known as ermine, a pelt so prized for its softness and purity that for centuries it was reserved for the ceremonial robes of royalty and nobility. The only part of the stoat that remains its original color is the very tip of its long tail, which stays a stark jet black. This black tip is thought to act as a decoy, drawing a predator's eye away from the stoat's body. It is a hunter that wears the snow as a cloak and history's most coveted fur. The story of the Donner Party is a stark chronicle of what happens when human plans are broken by the sudden, early arrival of an impassive winter. In 1846, a group of American pioneers sought a new life in California, but they were delayed by taking a supposed shortcut. They found themselves trapped by an unusually early and heavy snowfall in the Sierra Nevada mountains Their path, now known as the Donner Pass, became an impassable wall of snow, which eventually reached depths of over 20 feet or 6 meters in their makeshift, snowbound camps. Cut off from the world, the group faced a long, agonizing ordeal of profound cold and starvation. The indifferent power of the mountain winter turned their journey of hope into a desperate story of human endurance, a somber testament to the absolute authority of the season. The igloo, a traditional shelter of the Inuit, is a marvel of physics that uses the very material of winter, frozen snow, to create a pocket of surprising warmth. The key is the material, not ice, but hard-packed, wind-blown snow, which is full of millions of tiny, trapped air pockets. These air pockets make the snow a fantastic insulator, much like a down-filled jacket. The structure is a perfect, self-supporting dome, built from a spiral of cut blocks. A cold sink is dug at the entrance, so the heaviest, coldest air drops down and stays low. The living platform is elevated, and body heat, along with a small stone lamp, is enough to warm the insulated space. The inner walls will melt slightly, then refreeze, creating an airtight ice glaze that seals the shelter, a place where human breath can hold the deep, Arctic cold at bay. The ptarmigan is a hardy winter bird that grows its own pair of natural snowshoes as the season turns cold. This bird, which lives in alpine and Arctic tundra, is a master of winter adaptation. Like the snowshoe hare, its plumage transitions from a mottled brown in summer to a brilliant, pure white in winter, providing perfect camouflage against the snow, but its most unique adaptation is on its feet. As winter approaches, the ptarmigan grows dense, stiff feathers on its toes and around its feet. These feathers dramatically increase the surface area, allowing the bird to walk lightly on top of the soft powder without sinking. This allows it to move easily across the drifts to forage for the frozen buds and twigs that it eats to survive, a creature that masters the soft, deep terrain of its frozen world. In Siberia, the ancient and massive Lake Baikal transforms in winter into an otherworldly landscape of frozen art. This lake is so deep and so vast that it contains about 1/5 of the world's unfrozen fresh surface water, and when this immense body freezes, it does so with a unique and breathtaking clarity. The ice, which can be over 3 feet, or about 1 meter thick, becomes so clear and still that one can see deep into the dark water below. But its true magic lies in its pressure ridges and formations. As the ice sheet freezes, it expands, contracts, and cracks under the extreme cold. This pressure shoves massive plates of ice upward, creating jagged, turquoise-colored hills of ice, called hummocks, that glow in the low winter sun. It is a world of fractured, transparent mountains, a silent, frozen sculpture garden of immense scale. Beneath the soil of the Arctic tundra, and in high mountains, lies a layer of earth that has remained frozen for millennia. This is permafrost, defined as any ground from soil to rock that has remained at or below 32 degrees Fahrenheit or 0 degrees Celsius for at least 2 consecutive years. In some parts of Siberia, this frozen ground extends down for nearly a mile, or over 1.5 kilometers, and holds within it a vast, sleeping history. It is a concrete hard mixture of earth and ice that locks away immense stores of ancient carbon from undecayed plants and animals. But this ancient cold is not permanent. As the climate warms, this frozen ground is beginning to thaw, releasing its long-held carbon and destabilizing the very land itself. A silent, slow awakening with profound consequences for the modern world. One of winter's most deceptive and dangerous phenomena is black ice, a hazard named for its complete colorless invisibility. It is not black, but perfectly transparent, a thin, glassy veneer of ice that forms on the surface of roads, bridges, and sidewalks. It gets its name because it allows the dark color of the pavement to show through, making it appear as if the road is merely wet or even perfectly dry, when it is, in fact, a treacherous, frictionless sheet. It forms when the air temperature is at or just below the freezing point, but the ground temperature is warmer, causing sleet or light rain to freeze instantly on contact with the colder surface of the road. It is a silent, hidden trap, a reminder that the winter's grip can be strongest where it is least visible. The sport of curling, with its heavy, polished stones and frantic sweeping, is a game of physics played upon a carefully prepared sheet of ice. The ice surface in curling is not flat and smooth, like a skating rink. It is carefully pebbled by spraying tiny droplets of water across it, which freeze into small, raised bumps. This pebbled surface reduces the friction, allowing a 42-pound or about 19-kilogram granite stone to glide for over 100 feet or more than 30 meters. The vigorous sweeping that runners perform in front of the stone is not just for show. It momentarily warms and melts that pebbled ice, creating a microscopic film of water. This lubrication reduces the friction and the curl, allowing the sweepers to subtly and desperately guide the stone's path toward its target, a perfect, gentle collaboration with the ice. The vast frozen tundra of the far north acts as a perfect long-term vault, and it has preserved the remains of creatures that walked the earth during the last ice age. The woolly mammoth, a giant of the frozen steppe, is the most famous of these frozen tenants. Because the permafrost in places like Siberia has remained solidly frozen for over 10,000 years, the bodies of these animals have been kept in a state of remarkable preservation. They have been discovered not as skeletons, but as complete carcasses, with their thick, shaggy fur, skin, muscle, and even their last meals of grasses still undigested in their stomachs. These frozen giants are a direct physical link to a lost world, a time capsule delivered to us by the unwavering, preservative cold of the long, unbroken winter of the earth. In 1991, high in the Ötztal Alps on the border of Austria and Italy, melting ice revealed a silent traveler from the deep past. This was Ötzi, the Iceman, a man who died in the mountains over 5,300 years ago during the Copper Age. He was not buried, but was naturally mummified by the sun, the wind, and the deep, persistent cold of the glacier that soon enveloped him. He is Europe's oldest known natural human mummy, and he offers an unparalleled frozen snapshot of a long vanished world. He was found with his full set of winter clothing, made of different animal skins, and his tools, including a copper axe, a bow, and a quiver of arrows. He is a message in ice, a human story preserved in perfect frozen detail, telling us of a single fatal journey into the ancient, high-altitude cold. For the massive Pacific walrus, the slow, seasonal advance and retreat of the Arctic sea ice is the rhythm of life itself. These enormous social animals cannot swim indefinitely. They must have platforms on which to rest, nurse their young, and escape from predators in the water. The vast floating sheets of winter sea ice are their perfect mobile sanctuary. They use these ice floes as giant resting places, hauling out by the hundreds or thousands. But as the climate warms, the winter ice forms later, retreats earlier, and is thinner than ever before. This forces the walruses to abandon their ancestral ice nurseries and congregate in massive, overcrowded, and often dangerous herds on coastal beaches. A stark, visible sign that the very foundation of their frozen winter world is slowly and steadily vanishing. A simple, low-tech, and yet profoundly effective tool against the power of the winter wind is the snow fence. These fences, typically made of wooden slats or plastic mesh, are not built to stop the snow, but to control the wind. They are placed in open fields, parallel to a road or railway, at a strategic distance. As the wind, which is carrying its load of blowing, drifting snow, hits the fence, its speed is slowed. This sudden drop in velocity forces the wind to release its burden, and the snow falls out of the air in a controlled, predictable drift on the downwind side of the fence. This manufactured drift protects the road, which remains clear as the wind, now stripped of its snow, sweeps over it. It is a clever, passive defense, using a simple barrier to redirect the winter's immense, airborne rivers of snow. A ship designed to conquer a frozen sea is one of the most powerful and specialized vehicles on Earth. This is the icebreaker, a vessel built not to be sleek, but to be a brute force against the solid, frozen ocean. Unlike a normal ship with a sharp bow designed to cut through water, an icebreaker has a reinforced, spoon-shaped and rounded hull. It does not cut the ice. It uses its immense engine power and weight to drive its bow up and onto the solid ice sheet. It is the ship's own massive weight, bearing down from above, that cracks and shatters the ice, clearing a path. Some are double-acting, able to move just as effectively backward as forward. They are the essential, powerful engines that keep the northern sea routes open, a loud, crashing, and relentless force against the silent, frozen grip of the sea. The history of the frozen north is carried on the backs of its most faithful and powerful engines, the sled dogs. Breeds like the Siberian Husky and the Alaskan Malamute are not simply pets. They are biological marvels, bred for millennia to endure and to work in the planet's harshest winter conditions. They possess a thick, double-layered coat for insulation and a unique counter-current heat exchange in their paws to keep them from freezing. Most importantly, they have a metabolic switch, a poorly understood ability to run for hundreds of miles or kilometers without ever hitting the wall or becoming fatigued in the way a human athlete would. They are a perfect partnership of human and animal, a living, breathing, and joyous force that finds its truest purpose in the deep snow and the bitter, biting cold. A whiteout is one of winter's most disorienting and dangerous atmospheric events. It occurs when a heavy, falling snow and a dense, uniform snowpack on the ground are combined with overcast, diffuse light. In these conditions, the light is scattered so perfectly and so evenly that all shadows, all texture, and the very concept of a horizon completely disappear. The world becomes a uniform, luminous, and featureless field of white. It is impossible to tell the sky from the ground, to judge distance, or to perceive direction. A person can lose all sense of balance and motion, an experience known as sector whiteout, leading to profound vertigo. It is the feeling of being erased, a total sensory deprivation, where the world is reduced to a single, endless, and empty white void. The simple, captive winter world of a snow globe was born from an accidental observation of reflected light. The first snow globe was created in Vienna around the year 1900, not as a toy, but as a surgical tool. A man named Erwin Percy was attempting to create a brighter, more focused cold light for surgical lamps, which were then just weak gas flames. He tried filling a flask of water and putting it in front of the flame, and then added tiny particles of metal and ground rice to see if they would reflect the light. The particles, floating gently in the water, reminded him of falling snow. From this scientific failure, an artistic idea was born. He built a tiny model of a church, sealed it in the globe with his snow, and the first snow globe, a tiny, perfect, and captured winter, was created. While mammals hibernate, cold-blooded reptiles like alligators must endure the winter using a different strategy, known as brumation. Like hibernation, it is a state of deep dormancy, where metabolism slows to a crawl, but it is entirely dependent on the outside temperature. Alligators, at the northern edge of their range, have developed a startling and clever survival tactic. As the water in their ponds or marshes begins to freeze over, they will position themselves at the surface, with just their nostrils pointing straight up, out of the water. They allow the ice to freeze solid around their snouts, locking them in place. They are not breathing, but are in a deep, cold torpor, and this tiny, frozen air hole allows them to get just enough oxygen to survive, a reptilian snorkel that tethers them to life until the thaw. The legend of the Yeti, or the abominable snowman, is a story born from the immense, silent, and intimidating emptiness of the world's highest mountains. For centuries, tales have been told by the people of the Himalayas of a massive ape-like creature that walks upright, leaving large, mysterious tracks in the deep, high-altitude snow. These stories were a part of local folklore, a personification of the dangers and spirits of the high passes. The legend captured the global imagination when mountaineers in the 20th century began reporting their own sightings of these tracks. While science has suggested that Yeti sightings are often misidentified bears or other mountain animals, the legend endures. It is the story of the unknown, a perfect, shaggy monster for a landscape of pure, white, and uninhabited mystery. The great, recurring ice ages, which have seen massive glaciers advance and retreat over the continents, are not random events. They are driven by a slow, predictable, and celestial dance known as the Milankovitch cycles. These are long-term cyclical changes in the Earth's orbit and orientation to the Sun. The shape of Earth's orbit, its eccentricity, stretches from circular to more elliptical over a 100,000-year cycle. The tilt of its axis, or obliquity, rocks back and forth over a 41,000-year cycle, and its precession, or the wobble of its axis, completes a cycle every 26,000 years. These three overlapping rhythms do not change the total energy the Earth receives, but they profoundly change where and when the sun's warmth lands. When they align, they can cool the northern summers, allowing winter snow to survive, accumulate, and grow into the great ice sheets. The cryosphere is the name for all the parts of the Earth where water exists in its solid, frozen form. It is a vast, interconnected, and globe-spanning system. It includes the permanent, massive ice sheets of Antarctica and Greenland, the floating sea ice of the Arctic and Antarctic oceans, the high-altitude glaciers that sit like crowns on mountain ranges, the frozen, hard ground of the permafrost, and the seasonal, temporary blanket of snow that covers the land each winter. This collective, frozen world is a vital part of the planet's climate. Its bright, white surface reflects sunlight back into space, helping to regulate the Earth's temperature. It is the planet's cooling system, a vast, silent, and frozen measure of the world's thermal health, now shrinking as the climate warms. On a clear, bitterly cold winter day, the sun may appear to be flanked by two bright, luminous impostors on either side. These celestial echoes are known as sundogs, or their scientific name, parhelia, which means beside the sun. This beautiful optical phenomenon is the work of ice. It only happens when the air is very cold and filled with millions of tiny, flat, hexagonal ice crystals, floating gently down like a fine, invisible dust, often as part of a thin, high-altitude cirrus cloud. As the low winter sun shines through this field of diamond dust, the plate-like crystals act as tiny, perfect prisms, bending or refracting the light. This refraction creates a bright, focused spot of light, often with a rainbow-colored inner edge, 22 degrees to the left and right of the real sun. A pair of silent, luminous companions in the frozen sky. Long before Christmas was a dominant holiday, the Romans celebrated a joyous, chaotic festival in the dead of winter called Saturnalia. Held in mid-December, it was a week-long celebration in honor of the god Saturn, a festival of light, peace, and the turning of the year, held during the darkest days. It was a time when all the normal rules of society were inverted. Business was suspended, schools were closed, and gambling, normally forbidden, was permitted. In a profound reversal, masters would serve their slaves, who were allowed to speak freely and wear their master's clothing. It was a carnival of organized chaos, a time of feasting, gift-giving, and revelry, a necessary bright and loud explosion of human warmth against the cold, encroaching darkness of the winter solstice. The uncontrollable, chattering tremor that seizes the body in the cold is a powerful, involuntary survival mechanism. This is shivering, and it is the body's last-ditch, high-energy effort to generate its own heat. When the body's core temperature begins to drop, the brain sends a rapid, rhythmic signal to the large muscles, causing them to contract and relax in quick succession. This is not useful, directed motion, but pure, inefficient work. The sole purpose of this frantic, uncontrolled muscle activity is to burn energy in the form of glucose and release the byproduct of that burn as pure metabolic heat. It is a biological furnace kicking into high gear, a desperate, automatic, and life-saving dance to fight back the cold and protect the vital organs from the creeping, silent chill of hypothermia. On a night of deep, sudden, and bitter cold, the frozen ground itself can cry out with a startling, explosive sound. These events, which can be loud enough to wake a sleeping town, are known as frostquakes or cryoseisms. They occur when a period of rain or a sudden thaw has saturated the ground, filling all the tiny pores in the soil with water. If a flash freeze then arrives, with temperatures plummeting rapidly, this trapped water freezes and expands with powerful, irresistible force. This expansion puts immense, unbearable stress on the frozen, brittle earth, or bedrock. When the stress becomes too much, the ground or rock fractures, releasing the energy as a seismic tremor and a loud, subterranean boom. It is the sound of the earth itself, cracking under the sudden, powerful, and expansive grip of the winter. And so, our journey through the quiet, frozen world of winter comes to a gentle close. We have walked through this crystalline land, from the turning of the solstice to the hidden life that thrives beneath the subnivean zone. We have seen the microscopic, six-sided artistry of a snowflake and the vast celestial dance of the aurora. We have listened to the frozen earth crack in a frostquake, and the high, shimmering song of the polar clouds. Winter, we have found, is not an ending, but a long and necessary pause, a time of profound and silent transformation. It is the resilience of the evergreen, the patience of the wood frog, and the collective, vibrating warmth of the honeybee's cluster. It is a world of perfect, muffled silence, but also one of immense, slow-moving power, from the carving of a glacier to the sudden, warm breath of a Chinook wind. The world may seem to sleep, but it is merely dreaming, gathering its strength in the deep, protective cold, waiting for the quiet, certain promise of the thaw. If you happen to still be awake, that's perfectly all right. You can simply lie back, let the music keep flowing in the background, and drift in and out of the story at your own pace. But if your eyes are heavy, let the stories of winter and the gentle music carry you softly into rest. Sleep well. Good night.